Genesis 1, verse 21. So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. This day of creation holds both life in the sea and life in the sky. And today we're going to spend our time noticing what's happening beneath the surface. Something I kept noticing as I read this part of creation is how much life exists beneath the surface of the water. Sea creatures are created in abundance in places we don't really see. And if I'm being honest, they're often out of sight, out of mind for us. And yet God creates them anyway in abundance and calls them good. There's something really meaningful about that to me. Life doesn't need an audience to be intentional or good. This part of creation shows us a God who is abundant even when no one is watching. A God whose care and creativity aren't limited by what we notice or pay attention to. As we paint today, I want you to just sit with that idea that there is life, meaning, and goodness happening beyond what we can see. Grab your supplies and let's get started. Hello, friends. I am so happy that you're here, and I'm really excited to share this painting with you. And I'm going to warm up really quickly here on my scripture page. So those of you who are new, thank you for joining me. And those of you who aren't new, thanks for coming back. I really love this little community that we're building. Being able to paint with you is so much fun. So much fun. So if you are new here, just wanted to point out that you can grab the printable that has this scripture on it by signing up at the link that's in this video description. That is just my way of being able to help anybody out who maybe is a little bit short on time. And you also get the video lessons sooner than everyone else if you do that. So just throwing that out there. I also get questions about what supplies I'm using. And I just wanted to point out that I am listing them in the video description too. And they're in every video description. So the supplies pretty much stay the same every week. And so if you're interested to know exactly which paints I'm using, or the watercolor journal, or the waterproof marker, you can grab that there too. So you can also just use what you have at home. So just wanted to let some of you know, because I do get that question quite a bit. And if you want to use what I'm using, although it's not necessary, but if you do, I have links there for you to make it really easy to grab what you need or to know what you're looking for if you are at the craft and art store. Okay, so I have got my colors on there. I'm going with the blue and the green because it just really fits with today's painting. A couple of things I want to point out are that I have taped off my paper. This is just blue painter's tape, super handy to have. Just gives you that nice clean edge. And where we're filling up the whole page with paint, it just makes it easier if you have it taped off. I'm just adding a couple of paint strokes just to give it a little more visual interest, but that's just me. You can do this page however you want. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give this a quick dry and then we will begin. All right, we are going to start with a little bit of drawing. Okay, now don't be scared. It's going to be great. Okay, I'm going to do just the ocean floor, and I am doing 2 layers. So I've got my
one in the back and one in the front. So it's really just like a bumpy little hill kind of a thing, okay? You don't need to be super precise with this either. And actually, looking at my space, I'm just trying to decide if I have enough space for my ray up there. And I do, but I think I'm gonna just make this a little smaller so I have a bit more space up there in the water. So that's just one thing that you want to keep in mind. And then I want to show you how to do this silhouette of the stingray. It's actually pretty simple. So if you want to practice on just a regular sheet of like computer paper, you can totally do that. So I've got my computer paper here so that I could show you. Let's put this up here. So when I was looking at different pictures of them, they basically look like an umbrella. Okay. I told my husband this and he was like, what? It doesn't look like an umbrella. Okay, hear me out. I'm gonna turn it this way. You might see it in a minute. So if you think about an umbrella, kind of comes like this. You have a curve, right? So this is how I would build out the shape of the manta ray. And then down the middle, you're just going to draw a line. And I'm doing it big like this because I know it's harder to see on this paper because I'm going to be doing it smaller. Okay, and from here, you can really vary how the little, I don't even know what to call these, arms, flippers, whatever these things are, come up and around. Okay, so do you see how it kind of looks like an umbrella? Maybe that's just me. Kind of like this umbrella-y shape. And then kind of meets down at the bottom like this and curves. Trying to make it symmetrical. Not great at making things symmetrical. You can see that's not symmetrical. I've just accepted it. That's part of how I make stuff. Not symmetrical. Okay, and then if I bring this up just a little bit, this helps me know where the center line is. And they've got these like little bits that come up. So I'm doing little lines and then it kind of curves up. And then you've got like a little smile and then up like this. Okay. So if we connect all that, this bit I feel like is actually maybe a bit smaller. And then we have the stinger. Okay. So that's how you can build it out. Now, if you want to like have the arms come out more like this, so it looks like it's swimming in a different direction, you can do that. But this way is really simple, and the visual of the umbrella actually really helped me. So that is how I'm going to build mine. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to draw it out with a pencil. I've got mine kind of gliding more to the right, like leaning towards the right. You can put yours wherever you want. I am going to actually tilt my paper a bit because that just helps me, you know, and I'm here for any tools that help myself. I think is totally fine to do. Let me tilt this over here. So I'm going to start with that kind of umbrella shape. And I'm trying to go light on the paper, but dark enough that you can see it. And you just go as light as you're comfortable with. Okay. And I've got my arm flipper thingy. And it kind of comes down. And this bottom bit is kind of curved a little bit like that. Then I can bring this just up just a tiny bit, and then I have, this is its little head. Kind of looks like a little smile right there. And then I can make any adjustments. So I'm pulling this line down so it connects to this. And maybe I make these like a little bit longer. Maybe something like that. We got the stinger. Now you could make the stinger like not a perfectly straight line, maybe a little curved if you want. It's up to you. But that's looking good to me. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna outline with a really thin micron pen. And the reason for this is it will just make the painting process go a bit easier because I know that I have my main outline is figured out, and I can also erase my pencil lines without worry. So I'll just kind of add that. Okay. Also using a thin micron because it doesn't take super long to dry, so then we can get right to painting. So I'm going to go ahead and erase. If you're using a thicker brush pen or brush marker, then make sure you give it a quick dry, because if you go straight to erasing with something that's thicker, you could accidentally smear your ink, and I just don't want that to happen to you. Okay, so just a little bit of tip there for you. Okay, I am going to get a couple of colors ready. So you can see on the top, we've got green and then a little bit of blue-green and then blue. So I am going to mix up just a little bit of that blue-green. I've got ultramarine as my main blue that I'm using. And I'm trying to get like a decent amount of pigment on here, just because I really like mine with a bit more vibrancy in my paintings. And I don't tend to paint things super soft, as in like very soft colors. But this is also part of like your personal preference and what you like. Okay, so I've got that color, and then I've also got a little bit of water right in my different paint wells, so they're good to go. And there's actually a couple of brushes I'm going to use. So the first one I'm going to use is a big flat brush. That's going to be to put the color down quickly. And then I am also going to be using a round brush. This is like a medium-ish brush. That's to pull some of the paint off, to lift some of the paint off, so that we have these like little bits of light coming through. So those are a couple things to just have on hand. And this is, if you did the birds, this is kind of similar where we need to work quickly. Now with the birds, we did wet on wet. This one, I am not going to do wet on wet, but if you can see off to the side here, probably not so well, but I'm really dipping into that paint. Okay, and I am going to paint across, back and forth, and then I'm going to do kind of like this curved shape. Okay, and then I'm going to clean my brush, and then I'm going into my blue-green that I mix, and then I'll do like a little overlap, and I'm doing this kind of a shape. And I'm moving fast because I want to be able to add more color to it and like let it blend a little bit more. And I'm going to go into my blue, making that curve shape. And then I think I'm going to go into my cobalt blue too, just right underneath. And I'm painting all the way to the edge of the tape, and then I'm painting down into some of the sand area. Once I am sure that I've gotten all of the edge of the sand, then I'm good to go. And then I'm going to actually start back at the top and just add a bit more color. And again, this is something that you have to do kind of fast. And I decided I was going to bring some of that blue-green down just a bit more because I just like the way that looks. Oh, I'm noticing my ring light is really putting a glare on that. Okay, hopefully you can still see that okay. And then adding some of that blue and other cobalt blue. Okay, if you got any puddles, you got to mind your puddles, take care of those. My paper is shiny, but it's not too puddly. I've got a couple, but I'm going to take care of those in just a minute. First, what I'm going to do is I'm lifting. So my brush is wet. Well, I dipped it in the water and then I'm wiping it on my paper towel so it's not soaking wet. It's just like a tiny bit wet. And then I'm going to push down and drag and then wipe on my paper towel to make these rays. And when doing this, you don't want to scrub back and forth a ton so that, because I don't want you to accidentally like pill your paper, you know, put little holes in it. And you can have the light rays come from more of like a center point or all go like one direction. That is completely up to you. And the more that you lift, the lighter that area will be. So it just depends. This is kind of like if you did the begin the light tutorial, it's like that, okay? I've got a little puddle here, so I'm just going to pick up a bit of that paint there, and I have a little puddle here, so I'm just picking up that paint, wiping it on my paper towel, just like that. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to make another color. I'm taking my ultramarine, or whatever blue you want to use. Doesn't have to be ultramarine. Making a nice little puddle here. You want to make a decent amount because we're going to use this color to paint all of the bottom, the sand all the way on the bottom, okay? And for both the front and the back, you'll see we're going to layer. And I want to make it a bit darker, so I am grabbing a little bit of Payne's Gray and I'm adding it to that mixture. This will make it less vibrant and more desaturated. Now, if you make some and it's not enough, it's okay. We can make more. So I'm going to call this good, but I do need to dry my painting before I go on, so I'm going to do that. All right, now I'm going to take that blue. So if you don't have any more, then you can mix some up. And I'm going to add more Payne's Gray. So we want it to read as darker than the layer that we just laid down, okay? But it doesn't have to be like straight gray. So I'm going to paint this front layer that color. And as I'm putting it down, I feel like I could probably go a bit stronger gray. So I just threw some in there and then I'll just paint right over there. There we go. I'm really swirling in my paint to load up that paint on my brush so I don't have to come back and get more. And if you have an uneven texture, that actually works pretty well for what we are painting, so I wouldn't worry about it. Okay. One thing I'm noticing about my painting is this one, the gradient was a lot smoother than this one. So I'm just pointing that out because I make stuff that I'm like, oh, I wish it turned out a bit different. I do that too. And so I'm noticing it in my own work. And so if that happens to you, I just want you to know you're not alone. It's okay. Like, we are also focusing more on the process of what we're doing than the outcome. There's so many things that you learn from making art besides how to paint a thing. So I'm learning right now to be okay that they look different. Okay, so the next part is to paint these little coral and sea shapes. These little these things right here. You see them. So I actually grabbed a different project that I have been working on for a kids class that I'm doing. I'll kind of bring this up here so you can see. So for this project, what I wanted to point out were the shapes of the sea plants. Okay, this is just a collage, and if it helps you, I want you to think about these pieces being cut out of paper as you paint them. You can see we've got like some really uneven edges. When we cut out of paper, it's really hard to be super precise, right? Unless you're using a razor blade or something. And I want you to just notice these shapes that are on this paper. And I think with having the black background, it helps you to be able to see them. And I want you to notice how I've got some more rounded edges. These kind of feel a little bit more like a cactus, right? And some other rounded edges, and then some that kind of come more at a point. And by doing that, having a variety of shapes on our painting, it really gives a lot of visual interest. I'm also trying to vary the height. We talked about this with the trees, so we've got some that end taller, like up here, and then some that are quite short. So having those ideas in mind as you're painting this, I feel like will really help. So let me just point out and show how to do a couple of these shapes. You're going to want to grab a small brush because they are, some pretty small shapes. And I am going to load up a bit more paint into what I've mixed. Probably see me on the side here, just barely. Scoot this over. Okay, and what I'm looking for is I want a color that is that similar to what is in this background right here. So I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of Payne's Gray, but what I'm trying to do is I don't want it super, super watery. I don't want it really thick because the paint still has to move. And the reason why I don't want it super watery is when we're doing small details, it can be really easy for the paint to get away from you if your paint is really watery. Okay, so I have it on my brush, and I just want to show you how I build out some of these shapes. In fact, I'm going to zoom in here. Okay, so I'm going to start with like a main shape. This will be like where everything comes off of. And I want you to notice how it's twisted. It's not straight up and down. And from here, it's basically like branches. So I can add more offshoots. And the more I kind of curve and twist, the more it's going to feel like it has a bit of movement in it. Okay, so we're just adding little offshoots to it. And I'm using more of the tip of the brush. And you can make the bottom maybe just like a little bit thicker and have as many or as few of those little offshoots as you want. Okay, another one that I think is pretty fun to make and a little bit odd looking, it's one of the ones that I cut out of paper. Oh goodness, this is going to be so zoomed in. Okay, so this little shape here, it's very similar, okay, except for the base is thicker and it's wider on the bottom, then kind of tapers up. And we have these like little offshoots. So those are fun to do. And maybe I'll put this one like over here. So I'll start by kind of sketching out a little base. And then I can come up and make these like little arms. And then I'll kind of just connect them and fill in that shape. Just kind of like that. Kind of like a weird little plant thing. And you can also have some that They kind of look like a little bush. I really like painting that shape, and you can put a few on there. Maybe vary their size and their location. Maybe we'll put one right here. And also, I just did like little circly marks, ovally marks. They kind of read as little rocks or texture or things like that. Okay, so there's that one. Now for this one, I want to make it a bit darker so that it can stand out on this color. Okay, so I'm adding a bit more Payne's gray, but also just being careful with how much water I'm adding. I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like that color. Okay, and same sorts of things. So some fun shapes are like this. Just think about doing curves. Just do curves, squiggly curves, and then you can thicken some parts up if you want, or you can leave it as is. Looks like seaweed. Also putting like just some little stones to ground it. And then also painting some shapes that literally just look like a little vine with leaves. And if you find that one of these is easier to paint than the other, just add a bunch of those. That's totally fine. You could practice some of these shapes if you want on a piece of scrap paper. And then just for visual interest, I liked putting some right down in the bottom here because it's just a little visually interesting to have some not all on the same line. So I'm just following what I've already done. Well, that one's pretty dark. I meant for it to have a little more blue. That's okay. Add another one here. And the ones that look like more of a cactus, it's similar to this, but the ends are rounded off, okay? So that's something else you can do to make like a variety of different kinds of shapes. And you can fill this up as much or as little as you want. So it's all up to you. Getting a little carried away here, but I like it. And I'm also going to pop one in the corner because again, unexpected, a little bit of movement. That's fun. At least I think it's fun. Hopefully you're having fun. Okay. And maybe I do like a little bushy shape down here. And filling up with like little rocks, little dots, little dashes. Really helps. Okay, cool. So the next thing we're gonna do is paint some little fish. Okay, you can totally skip this if you want. I'm going into my blue. This is very similar where I don't want it to be too watery because when we're painting tiny things, it can be easy for the paint to get away from us. And I just did 3 fish in mine. And I literally did like an almond shape and then 2 little fins on the bottom. So I'll do one right here. So I'm going to do almost like an almond shape. And then we'll just add a line and add a line like that. Simple little fish. I'll put one right here. So same kind of a thing, an almond shape, then 2 lines. Put one over here. And it's okay if some of them look like they're fading in the background. Kind of helps to give the impression that there's some in the background, which is fun. And I just put my hand in wet paint. Does not surprise me one bit. Okay, now this last bit, you have a couple of options for the ray, the stingray. If you want, you can just grab a waterproof pen and fill it in like we did the trees for last week, or you can paint it. I am going to paint it. Same rules apply, where you just want to be careful with how much water you have on your brush, and you want to use a brush that you can get around all those small like little details. I'm going to dry this first though, because hand in wet paint, and then I'll paint. All right, for this one, I'm going to be using a size 3. And again, my paint is not super watery. And I might end up doing 2 layers if needed. So I wanted to show you this in case there's anyone who wants to try it. I know it can be intimidating to paint with black because, you know, once it's on there, it's on there. But wanted to give some tips and advice. So use a tiny brush. I'm seeing that this brush tip is already giving me some problems. So I'm moving to a smaller brush for this bit. And then I'll just try to make it even on the other side. So it looks like I did it on purpose. Also, quick tip, make sure you thoroughly clean your brush after using black, because it really does get into those bristles. And I just go a little bit at a time. I think there's a stray hair on this brush. When I get up closer to an edge, I'm going to hold my paintbrush more straight up and down so I can use the tip of it. And yeah, I'm kind of holding my breath here because, you know, this is like the ending of the painting and would really like for it to turn out. Ah, there you are. I found it. It's just a random. I thought I could pull it out. Nope, it's just a stray hair that's attached to the brush that I can't pull out. I'm going to cut it later, but right now I will just use 2 brushes to get around these little tiny bits and the edges. You can see you have to dip into your paint a lot more frequently when you're using a tiny brush. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's looking pretty dark to me. That's what I was hoping to get, is just like a really nice, almost inky black look. I will add the little stinger. Okay, there we go. Of course, pull off your tape. Make sure everything's dry before you close your book. But there you have it. I hope you enjoyed painting with me. As you finish your painting, I hope you remember that not all life is meant to be seen. There is abundance beneath the surface, life that is full and good even when no one is watching. And this part of creation gently reminds us that being unseen doesn't mean being unnoticed by God. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye, friends.